Hi everyone. So while most of the other guides that you see around usually focus on solo players first, I want to dedicate this video to group players and especially maybe the more non-meta options as well. I pushed out a video for that already yesterday talking about all the updated guides, etc. And here, for example, we have the meta section which usually focuses on group play. So if you haven't checked that already, I recommend you to do so. Here we're talking about the group XP meta, 2, 3, 4 player push, and there's also the Echoing Nightmare. And this will already give you a pretty good overview of what the season is going to be like for group players. Now, little spoiler, we have pretty much the same builds as season 27. So we have Dragul Nova especially, we have the Tarasha Meteor. Those builds are going to destroy in season 28 again. And the new builds, especially Natalia, are not really strong enough to compete with them. So while Natalia is not bad, it's not really on the same level. And there are also extra mechanics, for example, the Leech Blood Flask on the Necromancer that makes Nova just ridiculous this time around. So even more than the Tarasha probably, but I expect we see both. And obviously most of the time we have this concept of one trash killer and one boss killer. So this is also something to consider. But in the case of Meteor, it's kind of in between. You can do kind of both. So there is actually the option to run double Meteor Wizard, or potentially even something like Meteor with triple support, or you can combine it, maybe even do a Nova with a Meteor and these kind of things. So obviously you want to kill the boss fast at the end, and Meteor is not the best at doing that, but it kind of works. The best Rift Guardian killer options are Rathma and Corpse Spider Witch Doctor with LOD Spiders. Spiders is actually the stronger Rift Guardian killer, but against certain bosses, especially Hamelin and Saxtress, you're gonna have trouble because you need single target bosses. This doesn't matter as much. It does matter a bit for Rathma, but Rathma has not really this huge difference between the good and the bad bosses. So we're certainly going to see some of these Corpse Spider Witch Doctors. This is a very powerful build that will delete bosses. But I think for the most part, on the leaderboards, you're gonna see Rathma. It's just gonna be a really strong option in general. And you can also combine this with the Meteor Wizard, for example. You can have the Meteor as a trash killer, and then the Rathma as the boss killer. And you can bring also the curses like Frailty and these kind of things. And when it comes to supports, nothing has really changed. We have the Z-Barb and the ZDH. Of course, you can always make something else work, but those are simply the best. You have insane damage buffs from the DH, you have the insane toughness buffs from the Barb. Although that being said, next season, in season 28, we have insane toughness buffs coming from the season theme. We have movement speed coming from the season theme. We have CC immunity coming from the season theme. So the Barb is actually mildly superfluous here. But they still have the Rage Flip and the Ground Stomp, and those two things are usually indispensable. But who knows, maybe we're gonna see some other crazy stuff going on, especially later in the season with like support Necro plus support DH or something like that. There is definitely a bit of potential for this. So those are the meta pushing options. Let's talk about the experience farming. And that is, well, surprise, pretty much the same stuff. Because, well, 150 is a joke with those builds next season. And everyone who has like a coordinated team and, a powerful, like geared DPS in their team is going to destroy 150s basically. And you just farm those 150s. Like literally after like a week or two in the season, we're probably going to see these like 3-minute speed farming 150 record clears. And then as people grind more and more paragons, this gets even easier. And you can consistently do like sub 5 minutes 150s most likely very soon after season start. Basically, all of these current meta group builds barely received any buff, or if at all, from season 27, where they were already really powerful. And in season 28, well, they get the season theme suddenly, so they are going to be extreme, and this shows. Now, if you prefer lower GR speedruns that are actually like, closer to like real speedruns, then you have the red runs, of course, so we expect them to be pretty close behind. And there's also alternatives like God Demon Hunter. So God Demon Hunter is not as good as it was in season 24 with the Breezer Ethereal, but with the buff, it actually gets really close to the rats. So you can play like God rats basically with Z-Necro, ZDH or with Z-Barb. So here, like all these three classes are possible. This is usually how we play these rat runs, as they're called, with LOD mages, or you can do maybe even Bone Spear and God. Then there are also a lot of other people that ask me, what are you going to do when you're just 3 players or 2 players? So we have that covered as well. And the answer is usually you play the same stuff, but you drop one DPS or one of the supports. So here the first option in Freeman, for example, Meteor Wizard with 2 supports. So as I mentioned earlier, Wizard can do it all, so it's good all around. So he can just kill the boss with the 2 supports. You don't need a boss killer here. But technically you can also do something like Nova plus Ravma boss killer, so like 2 DPS and then like a support Barb or support DH, especially with the new support like pull DH. So that might also be an option, but realistically I think this one will win. And in groups again, it's unsurprisingly the Meteor Wizard. So Meteor Wizard is just that good. And again, like, because it can do it all and it doesn't have this either extremely high AoE damage like Nova and then no single target damage, or the reverse for Ravna, for example. You have like really no AoE damage but insane single target. This is just in between and works just fine. And here we also have this option of running the new God Natalia pull support DH with the spike traps. So we'll see if that actually pops off. I think there's definitely some potential here, so you can do those combos. Now I do realize that not everyone is playing Wizard and Necro next season, and there are other options. So if you look at this Trash Killer tier list, for example, we do have some of these options listed that are usually good for group playing purposes, especially for AoE damage. So you see here Nova and Meteor, they are just the best. But we have a bunch of other things here. We have the Masquerade, there's the Bone Spear, there's Poison Scythe, there's Mundunugu actually, Witch Doctor, and then Marauder and Natalia. So while these are not going to be like just blasting through those 150s, I for example highlighted my Natalia video where I was doing this on non-season. So while these options are not really as good as those others here, you can still use them if you still play the other classes. So there's definitely a bit of options for all the classes. There's even Heaven's Fury up here, and stuff like Twister if you really want. So basically almost any class has like at least one relatively powerful build for this purpose here. And a similar concept applies to 2-manning as well. So you usually want to have 1 support player and 1 DPS at least. And that DPS needs to be a good AoE DPS. So just trying to go in with a Ravma plus a support is not going to work. Ravma is a boss killer build, so you're not going to have much fun with that. You need to take one of those trash killers if you want to have any like real chance. There are also some other builds that are not here on this list because they were never really like relevant for like the format meta. For example, some of the other really strong solo pushing builds like Wave of Light. Wave of Light is not exactly like such a really good group build, but it is up here in S tier as a solo build. Potentially there's even Breaker, for example. So those builds theoretically also would work, and they would probably also land somewhere in this like B or A tier on our Trash Killer tier list. But since they were never like a thing, we don't have them there. One thing, however, that you have to be aware about is the lag issue. So this, for example, applies to Crusaders, like I Can't Condemn. If you want to play that build, which is basically the best pushing build for Crusaders, and you try to do like DPS in groups, you're not going to have a lot of fun because this build is already laggy in solo play, and you basically can't play that in groups. So there are some things like that to be aware about, but outside of that, essentially you can always group up with some of these meta builds and have 1 support, especially the AH, or a support Barb, and you can kind of make something work. And a similar concept also applies to speed farming in groups. So I talked about the red runs and the God and all these things. But if you look at our solo XP tier list here, we have a bunch of those really good solo farming builds listed out here. And you can also just always take 1 or 2 of these and mix and match them, and then have like a support or 2 thrown in there and just go blast. You know, we have multi-shot, we have God, we have even bombardment in here. There is POJ, Inna. So there's a bunch of things here, the Breaker and the Savage as well. And you can also combine those in groups. So as long as you play those builds well, you can definitely have success with them in even random parties. And some of them are definitely more suited for group play than others. But overall, they should all kind of work if you are playing one or the other class and not one of the meta classes. There are also those people that ask me what you're going to do if you're, for example, playing together as a team of 2 and you don't really want to play a support. Well, I wouldn't really recommend that. First of all, usually a support player is always better than a second DPS, but if you really want to do that, go ahead. And you should definitely try to pick 2 builds that are relatively similar in power level. So, you know, if you go on our solo tier list again, for example, you don't want to like pair one of these S tier builds with like a B tier build or like a C tier build or something like that. So at least pick like some of those in a similar range, and you can kind of make it work. Of course, make sure that, for example, you don't do like 2 times Nova, because then no one is going to kill the boss. and you should at least have someone who can kind of deal with elites and single targets, and then maybe another guy who is a bit better on AoE. So you do that, or you take like these all-around builds, for example, Meteor. You can also just do like 2 Meteor wizards, for example. Again, not really the best choice, but if you just want to have fun and blast together, you can do something like that. If you're not really sure about which build is like a really good AoE build and which build is not, again, we have those Trash Killer and those Swift Guardian Killer tier lists, but this doesn't cover like all the builds. But more often than not, for example, the intro also describes a little bit how the build works. Or we have like this, like, you know, plus and minuses here for each of the builds, and sometimes they say something like, you know, like single target damage or really strong AoE or these kind of things. So you can get a bit of a picture like that. Lastly, I want to talk about group leveling because I keep getting questions about this all the time. So I updated the Maxroll leveling guide here. I also released 2 videos, one with and one without cash leveling. So we have this entire section here describing this entire process, how to do it, etc. Make sure you are aware how leveling works this time because it's very different from the usual. And then people ask me, what are you going to do in groups? And well, this is answered here, but in short, in groups, it's quite difficult to keep massacre bonuses, which is like the thing that makes you level fast in solo. So you have 3 options here. Either you try to go together and everyone hits monsters before they die so that everyone gets the massacre counter, at least on PC, this is how that works. You need to hit each monster with everyone in the party. On console, apparently it's like a global counter for everyone, so that's a bit easier. You can easily do this massacre leveling. Number 2 is cursed chests. So this is something that's described down here. So you have this list of cursed chests, and the way to do this is everyone goes in their own separate games. You look for exactly these bounties here when you start a new game, and when you have one, you just invite everyone else. So it needs to be a bit coordinated, and then you just go there while everyone else is joining the game, and you blast down those cursed chests and repeat. So this is usually a pretty good strategy, especially if you have a very strong team. So for example, if you have those level 70 items, and if you have necromancers in the party, then with Cause Explosion, this is like a good strategy. And then lastly, there is bounty leveling. So I'm not going to go into this Halls of Agony Blades. I don't expect people really going to do that. But bounties is not such a bad idea to do. So I've done this in most of my practice runs actually. I just got my level 60 or my level 70 gear, and I started blasting bounties, and I reached level 70 with the first steps in the season journey already completed, and I could just get my Hades gift really, really fast. So that is not a bad option. You kind of do the split bounties on like at some torment level that everyone in the party can comfortably do. Or you could also have one guy just like blast ahead in their own game. If you have like someone who's really good at leveling, get to level 70 in like half an hour with all the level 70 items from the cache, etc. from this cache leveling. And then you just boost everyone else, and the other guys just, you know, also do bounty runs, for example, because that's actually something that can help you. There's definitely a good reason to assume that solo leveling will actually be faster than group leveling this time around because of this massacre streaks and these kind of things. And that's what I have to share here on the specifics of group play in Season 28. There are a lot of options. Some obviously are better than others, like the Nova, like the Meteor, etc. But you should also not be discouraged to try on your own, make your own teams, and, you know, just do whatever you have fun with. That's the most important part. Season 28 is a very, very powerful season. We have really strong builds all around, and we have a very powerful season theme. And as long as you're not trying to be like the absolute #1 on top of the leaderboards, you can do a lot of stuff to great success, even all the way up to GR 150. So I hope that this video helps you with your decisions and maybe gives you a bit more clarity about how group play will work and what you can do. If not, you can just comment down below. I will go check it out and maybe answer some more questions that you might have. Otherwise, I wish you good luck in Season 28. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you guys next time.